Hey folks, like this old school Flintstones shirt? I thought it was pretty neat. Found it online. I wanted to show it off because you can't really see what shirt I'm wearing sometimes. Anyway, whatever. Today I put a new article up on my blog, and I'm sorry for you folks who like to read things that I'm not putting articles on the blog as much as usual, or as I used to, but I'm doing these videos a lot and writing a book, and then that just kind of gets, the time for writing a blog kind of goes away. Anyway, the reason I wrote this as a blog before making the video is because I thought the concept was kind of difficult to exactly put into words, and I didn't want to just improvise. So, you can go read it, and we'll see how well I can, talk it through on this here video channel for those of you who like to watch things on video. But it involves an article that somebody sent me, somebody who watches this video channel. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Anyway, somebody sent me this interesting article, and it sparked some things, and I wanted to write about it. So the article is called A Universal Theory of Awakening, and it's by a guy named Michael Taft. And I'd never heard of Michael Taft before this person sent me this article. Apparently he is a guy who, what does he describe himself as? A writer and a mindfulness coach. He also describes himself as a science fiction freak and an interest, has a deep interest in neuroscience and things like that. And he's written a few books, and I get the impression that he's one of these guys who likes to present mindfulness in a purely secular way that's completely free from any of the so-called woo-woo of Buddhist mysticism. I don't want to say that's his entire career or anything, because all I know really is this one article, and then I looked him up on on the internet, and looked at his website a little bit, and some stuff about his books on Amazon. That's it. I don't have a huge knowledge of Michael Taft, so I don't want to impugn Michael Taft himself. I want to talk about the article, okay? So get that? It's the article. And the point of the article seems to be to try to present the idea of Buddhist awakening in a way that's completely secular and free from any sort of hint of the supernatural. So he starts off by explaining that our usual way of perceiving the world is a representation of reality and not reality itself. He says, usually this experience of self and world, which he kind of combines into one hyphenated word, is transparent, meaning that we are not aware that it is a representation. And Buddhist awakening is when you become aware of this representation as a representation. Which is fine, as far as it goes. That's, straight down the middle stuff as far as I'm concerned when you're trying to describe what Buddhism is all about. But here's where it gets funky for me. He says, there is a real you, a human being with blood and guts, and a real world, other people and animals, plants and planets, and well, everything out there. So those two bits are in parentheses anyway, whatever. But you have never experienced this real world directly. You are only ever experiencing the brain-generated representation of the world created from the real world impacting on your senses. Furthermore, you have never experienced yourself, the blood and guts being, directly, but only the brain-generated representation of yourself. Then he explains Buddhist awakening by saying, the word awakening in this case is a metaphor. Being asleep means that you still experience the self and world representation as transparent. You believe the dream your brain is assembling. The extent to which the self and world representation has become opaque, i.e. you see its constructedness, is the extent to which you are awake. You have awoken out of the dream of the representation of the self and world. Now, there is a glaring flaw in this logic that, well, I don't know if Mr. Taft himself sees this and he's just using it as a skillful means, or if he doesn't see it at all. But the flaw is really, really obvious to me. And let me see if I can explain it to you. And I'm referencing my own article to make sure I kind of get it right, because I think this is a delicate matter, and I'm not even sure I got it right in writing. But let's see if I can just repeat what I said in the article. Now, he talks about the brain. And he says that the real you is a human being with blood and guts that interacts with the real external world full of animals, plants, people, planets, and, well, everything. Okay? However, The very perception that I am a blood and guts human being and that the representation of the external world is generated inside my brain is also part of the same representation that Mr. Taft rightly questions. I hope I'm conveying that properly. So the very idea of brain and blood and guts human being is also part of the same representation that he's saying might not be true. So I cannot even know if I am a blood and guts human being and that I have a brain. Some of you may be wondering if I have a brain, but that's your problem, and maybe my problem too. But that's the flaw in the logic that I see there. And I'm not saying, again, I want to make sure this is clear, even though I've said this, I think, 3 times already. I'm not saying Mr. Taft doesn't see this. I'm just saying this is a flaw in the logic. Now, my own teacher, Nishijima Roshi, used to annoy people who like Buddhist mysticism, including this guy, by putting the idea of Buddhist awakening in similarly materialistic terms. He would describe Dogen's dropping off of body and mind, Shinjin Datsuraku, that's his famous phrase that he describes his awakening experience. He would say that was the experience when the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems become equally strong. So not one is not dominating the other. And I'm doing this gesture because this is the gesture he often used to represent what he was talking about. So he would put it in terms of the nervous system. And I hated that. I hated it because it seemed to reduce all of my experience, of beauty, love, truth, wisdom, the sound of the Beatles' White Album, whatever, to the interaction of chemicals and electricity inside the brain of a highly involved animal. Then I took it a step further, and I'm going to read off my own thing again, sorry for that. Let's just say, just for the sake of argument, that maybe all of my experience really is just chemicals and electricity. If that's so, then what are chemicals and electricity? If mere chemicals and electricity can produce things like love, friendship, wonder, the experience of the taste of a sour apple, or the feeling of the warmth when Ziggy the dog snuggles up to me in the morning, or the sound of that beeping trash truck over there that you're probably hearing all over this video, I'm sorry, then chemicals and electricity aren't mundane things at all. They're miraculous and mysterious in ways that all the woo-woo in the world could hardly ever express. How incredibly weird and mysterious chemicals and electricity in the brain of a highly evolved animal are. That's crazy mysterious. Now, there's a Star Trek episode called Spock's Brain, and it's universally lauded by Star Trek fans, regaled, not lauded, as the worst Star Trek episode ever, and of course, that's why I love it. I think it's one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek, and in it, these weird alien women steal Mr. Spock's brain and install it in the central computer of their planet to run their planet's, stuff. Yet when they confront these women, they seem to not possess at all the kind of intelligence that would be required to do such an amazing thing. They seem pretty ditzy. They seem like kind of airhead ladies. And when Captain Kirk confronts them about this, the leader of the alien women says, "Brain and brain? What is brain?"
You have come to destroy us.
No, I promise you. We just want to talk to somebody about Spock's brain, that's all.
Brain and brain! What is brain?
Which I love that line. But it's my question too. Brain and brain, what is brain? Now, in the case of Nishijima Roshi, I know that he didn't really reduce everything to materialistic ideas in his real understanding of things, because he was always very adamant in pointing out that Dogen's philosophy and Buddhism in general was neither idealism nor materialism. So he wasn't saying it was materialism, but the fact is that a lot of Buddhists and a lot of people who are attracted to Buddhism will conflate Buddhism with idealism. So I think what he was doing with the materialistic explanations was to throw a materialistic sort of explanation of the nervous system out there to kind of kind of right the balance. And in private conversations with Nishijima Roshi, that's when I saw his mystical side, even though he hated the word mystical. But sometimes I would say, yeah, you're being kind of mystical there. And I remember one time that he said, well, it may be mystical, but is never strange. So I think that was his distinction. Strange would be where you get into the woo-woo. Mystical is something maybe a little bit more respectable. So maybe Michael Taft's theory of universal theory of awakening, or however he puts it, can be useful for people who are not ready to take that leap. Because we're really, as a culture, Americans, Europeans, Australians, people in that kind of swoop of the world, are very attached to our materialistic notions of things, and anything that sounds anti-materialistic will automatically put people off, and they won't even listen. But I think there is a place for that mystical-sounding stuff, and it's really helped me, and I think it helps a lot of people, so I don't think it's fair to just throw it away. Dogen's a good example of what to do with this, because he's rightly called a mystical realist. That's Hee-Jin Kim's description of him, because he has that mystical side to him, and yet he has a realistic side to him. And one of the ways he explains reality is by the use of contradiction. So he'll put the materialistic viewpoint right up against the idealistic viewpoint and say, yeah, they're both true as far as they go, but here's another viewpoint, which is the viewpoint of action. And that's why Nishijima Roshi called Buddhism a philosophy of action, because it's a philosophy that your mind, really thinking mind anyway, can't make sense of. Our thinking brain is used to contrasting things to each other. That's how it works. That's how we think of things, is by contrasting them with other things, even when we don't notice that we're doing that. So maybe it's impossible to hold these contradictory ideas together in our thinking mind, which is why we call it a philosophy of action that you experience in real action in the present moment, and that's why Dogen is so contradictory. And there you go! I got through it. I hope that made some sense to you. If you want to contribute to me making sense, then you can send a donation to me using this URL, which will take you to my Patreon and PayPal links, which are below. If you are looking at this on YouTube, in the YouTube description section, that is my sole means of support, really. I mean, I get a little bit from book royalties, but it doesn't help that much. What I'm mainly living on is what you guys donate to me, and I thank you very much for that. As always, if you're having financial trouble, do not donate to me. Don't. Donate to somebody else, or don't even donate to anybody. Donate to yourself. But those of you who are able to donate are really helping me out, and I thank you very much for that. See you next time. Have a good time all the time. See you later. Bye.